Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist, as well as a body language and counterterrorism expert, and today we're going to be analyzing whether or not it's feasible that Lindsey Graham could have been assassinated. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. On July 11th, longtime South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham passed away at the age of 71. The cause of death is reportedly aortic dissection with underlying heart disease. What we're going to be analyzing today is if it's feasible that there could be more to it. Could there be something that caused the aortic dissection beyond just natural causes? Shortly after this was announced, I saw people already talking about whether or not maybe a foreign government was involved. Was this something that happened naturally, or was this in fact an assassination that was meant to look like something that happened naturally? First, we're going to watch some recent footage of Lindsey Graham, and then we're going to look at what the evidence supports. All right, let's just jump right in.
As of about 30 minutes ago, we've reached agreement with the White House on a version of the Russian sanctions bill that they...
Now, this is his final public appearance. As you can see right now, his energy level, everything about him seems about like normal.
They will support. It means it's going to become law. So when I get back to Washington, I'm going to go with Senator Blumenthal to the Republican and Democratic leader to see if we can find time to move this Russian sanctions package that would give tools to President Trump.
Now, obviously, right now he's talking about sanctions against Russia. This is nothing unusual. This is something he's talked about plenty of times and endorsed plenty of times before. But he is someone that is very hawkish on both Iran and Russia.
We have the formula to end this war. Help Ukraine be more lethal. Let those supporting Russia to know it's going to be a price to be paid if you keep doing it. And to try to find an off-ramp, not to humiliate Putin, but to end this war so that Ukraine will thrive and survive.
So to state the obvious, Lindsey Graham did have political enemies. He was very big on military intervention with Russia. He also was recently threatened by Iran. Now, if you look at this picture from Khomeini's funeral, this was posted by Lindsey Graham on July 6th. He obviously is jokingly saying, at least they used a good photo of me, judge me by my enemies. But as you can see, Iran, for example, was actively threatening Lindsey Graham. So is there a motive for foreign governments to go after Lindsey Graham? Well, it seems like it. It seems like they made pretty overt threats to him, at least Iran did. Now, as you can see in this video, Lindsey Graham is pretty much behaving like he normally does. If you've ever watched him speak, there's nothing unusual about this. This is basically how he typically comes across. That being said, prior to major cardiac events, there aren't always big signs. So the fact that he wasn't acting unusual and didn't seem unusual is not necessarily indicative that he wasn't going to have an event of this kind. That being said, let's talk a little bit about his family history, and then we're going to talk about the history of the way that foreign governments have typically assassinated people, how it is that they have done things that resemble something like this. Now, what's being reported is that his father, around 68 or 69 years old, passed away from a heart attack. Now, what's different about that than what he passed away from what Lindsey Graham passed away from, is that Lindsey Graham had an aortic dissection. Having a family history of heart attacks can be different than aortic dissections. So just because his father passed of a heart attack, him dying of an aortic dissection is not necessarily as predictable as you might think. Those are not always as connected as you might think. Something else I've seen people point out is that he likely would have had some world-class medical care, so people would have assumed that he would have caught something like this. That's not always the case, but I at least want to point out that the link between him and his father may not be exactly as it seems. Now, could an aortic dissection be induced? Could somebody cause something like that? Well, that's where we're going to go in and look at the history of people who have been assassinated by foreign governments, or who at least have been attempted to be assassinated by foreign governments. Now, intelligence agencies have assassinated people, and one method that they use can be poisons or toxins. Alexander Litvinenko, for example, he was poisoned with radiation. Alexei Navalny, who actually survived his poisoning, reportedly, they put a neurotoxin on his underwear. Now, no government claimed that poisoning of Alexei Navalny, but it doesn't change the fact that this can be how intelligence agencies operate. Now, something like an aortic dissection, how Lindsey Graham passed away, could that be induced by a poison, for example? Well, an aortic dissection can be caused by a massive spike in blood pressure, which can be caused by substances. It can also be caused by poisons. So when you ask questions like this, if they seem conspiracy-oriented, this is much more grounded in reality than some of the other conspiracies that we've seen floating around recently. Charlie Kirk, for example. Governments want to have plausible deniability. They do not want to execute somebody in front of hundreds or thousands of people unless it is an act of terror. Acts of terror are meant to be public. They are meant to cause confusion. They are meant to cause this sort of collateral damage. Whereas real political assassinations typically look more like this. Typically, someone will die from something that could plausibly be covered up by something else, a natural cause, an accident, so on and so forth. So when you look at a situation like this, he does have a medical history, at least according to what's being reported, that could be consistent with someone who has heart disease. But that's exactly the kind of thing a foreign government would want to use to make it look natural. Like I said, you can induce these kinds of issues with substances, poisons. There's a number of ways to cause something like this to happen. And so it's not entirely outside of the realm of possibility that something like this was induced, that was meant to bring minimal attention to the way it was done, but could also have maximum effect. Well, foreign governments certainly have the capability. They also have the motive. But there is no evidence at this point that anybody else was involved. So do I think Lindsey Graham was assassinated? It seems unlikely. I have no specific reason to believe that at this point, but I wouldn't refute it if evidence comes out later that suggests that there was foul play, that there was somebody else involved in causing him to have a spike in blood pressure, which caused an aortic dissection or something to that effect. If you have any other thoughts about this, or if there's anything else you want me to analyze, please let me know in the comments below. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.